If you want a mentor, be intentional about making that known and don't be afraid to ask. But I just have to tell you, Adam, I think mentors are in short supply these days because when you're looking for a mentor, you're looking for someone who's wise, typically who hasn't wrecked their life, self-destructed. You're looking for someone whose marriage is intact, whose family is fairly well intact, and who has a track record, who's lived and is kind of older because they have to have enough life experience. But all I'm saying is it's really hard. It's really hard to find good mentors. I think the pool is dwindling.
Hey crew, it's Adam and Emily, and we are back on the conversation. This is the South Dakota series, number 13.
Number 13.
Today's a little bit different though because we're cheating just a little. This isn't a South Dakotan, an honorary.
Honorary South Dakotan. He likes South Dakota. He pheasant hunts here on a regular basis, but he is from Minnesota. Don't hold it against him.
And we'll take him as a South Dakotan.
We
want him.
We'll take Bob.
Yeah, we'll put him under our wing. We have a fun fact about this state. So since Bob is from Minnesota, I kind of found a fact that was kind of Minnesota and South Dakota related.
Let's hear this.
Okay. South Dakota and Minnesota were almost part of a brand new state called the Dakota Territory that was supposed to be a part of Canada.
What?
Back in the 1960s, before they officially became
1860s.
1860s, excuse me. 50 years ago.
50 years ago, we almost became a part of Canada. What a tragedy.
1860s, South Dakota and Minnesota were officially shaped into states, but there was a proposal for them to join Canada instead because they felt like they were closer to their economy and culture.
Ooh, how about that? We
I don't
could have
know.
been Canadian. Yeah, how about that? Would have changed
Hey.
some things. Hey.
Hey, we can be Canadian now. And then we also want to share a couple of hidden gems. So I picked one and Adam picked one.
Yep, your hidden gem.
Yes, mine, again, this is in Minnesota, so it's a little bit cheating, but I picked the Laverne Drive-In movie theater, which you had said you had never gone to, but this summer you need to go.
I need to go. I did go to a drive-in back in the day. Millbank, South Dakota had a drive-in.
It's so
So
fun.
I went there. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I think
Yeah.
it's the last movie that I ever saw.
And it was
there.
that memorable that you remember it.
It was. When was the last movie you went to? Do you remember?
Probably last summer. We usually
No, do you know what it was though?
the movie
Yeah.
at the movie theater.
Yeah.
Oh, I have no idea what it was.
Doesn't sound like a very good experience.
I remember going though. I got a hot dog.
Awesome. For my hidden gem, I have two of them. I'm cheating. So my hidden gem in Minnesota is, first off, the largest candy company in Minnesota or whatever. You've never stopped by it because you
No.
don't like candy stores.
No.
I love because they have every possible candy and drink imaginable. So when I go there, our kids will explore, and it got like a whole bunch bigger a couple of years ago, but I usually pick a different type of root beer that I've never had before, so that's what I do there. So that, and then my other one that I enjoy more, it used to be called Lake Calhoun. It's called something else now that I don't know how to pronounce, but there's a group of lakes kind of in the uptown area of Minneapolis that I just love. So that for me is a hidden gem. Just going there, my wife and I will drive around the lakes and dream about houses we wish
Love
we could
it.
live in.
Ugh.
Or we'll get out and go on a walk, and just there's an ice cream shop there. So that would be my hidden
Fun.
gems.
Bring me warm weather.
Bring me warm weather. It's going to come sooner or later.
I hope. We have a couple great partners that sponsored this episode. Adam will tell us about those today.
Yeah, so our first partner is First Interstate Bank. I've been doing my personal banking there since 2007, which is insane. What grade were you in 2007?
Second, maybe?
Oh my gosh, no you were not.
I probably had like $10 to my name.
Oh my goodness. So I've been doing my banking with them forever, and we just redid our kitchen and got a HELOC loan from them. Joy is the person that I talk with all the time, and she's just been so amazing. So if you are looking for a bank, they have over 300 locations throughout 14 different states, Arizona to Colorado, Washington State to the great state of South Dakota. For more information and to find a location near you, visit firstinterstatebank.com. Our second partner is the Tyler Golf Group. If you are looking for a new home, you should use the Tyler Golf Group. Emily's looking for a new house. So if you're looking for a new house or you're looking to sell yours, go to the Tyler Golf Group. Tyler is one of my closest best friends. I trust him and his entire team. Jessica Steele's on his team as well. That's who we personally work with when we've sold our houses and bought houses. So if you are looking for a home, they won't just find you a place to live. They will find a home that you love. Visit the TylerGolfGroup.com. It's actually TylerGolfGroup.com. But go check it out. Again, I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, you're very passionate about the Tyler Golf Group.
I am.
I told Adam we were looking for houses, and his first question, did you go through the Tyler Golf Group? I'm like, no, I'm so sorry.
Seriously, though, it's just so cool. Like, it's so cool when
He
you
is.
trust people.
I know, and Tyler's such a great guy, so
Yeah.
it's so cool that he
There
sponsors.
it is. TylerGolfGroup.com.
Love it. So we have Bob Merritt on today. He's
Yep.
from Minnesota. I don't know much about Bob. Can you just tell us like the one thing you admire most about him?
Oh, there's so much I admire. So he, longtime pastor at Eagle Brook Church in the cities. When Bob's took over, Eagle Brook was a church of 300. When he came to his time was an end there. When it came to an end, it was over 30,000 people, which is insane. But there's so much I respect about Bob. He has a bold, big faith. Like, he trusts God for so much. He also has a huge heart for the lost, and I didn't know where that came from until this interview. That was one of my favorite parts. But the other thing I love about him is he's really quick to share his shortcomings. Like, he's done all these amazing things for God, and yet he's so quick to share his faults and shortcomings. And specifically near the end, he talks about struggling with anger at different points in his ministry, which I think for so many people and leaders, anger is something that we struggle with, just for being hurt, being jaded, being misunderstood. And so Bob shares like what to do if you're battling anger, and I just thought it was amazing. So
awesome.
There's so much that I respect about him.
Yes, love it. On that note, just sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation.
So Bob, this is a series I'm calling My Mentors. And whether you want to be connected with me or not, I connect you with myself 5 times a day. You've come up yesterday alone. I'm going to try not to exaggerate. I'm pretty sure I mentioned you at least 5 times in conversations with leaders in our church.
Wow.
At a staff meeting that we had, I brought up something you'd shared with me. And so I thank God for the impact you've had on me, the impact you've had on Embrace, the impact that you've had, in the lives of so many people. And so I just wanted to honor you first and just say thank you. Where I want to start, mentors that you've had. What does that look like? Is there specific people that when you look back, you would say these are 2 or 3 mentors who were instrumental for me?
Thanks, Adam, by the way, for those great undeserved. I talk about you a lot. I just talked about you in Phoenix with a major donor of ours, so I'm just really grateful for our friendship. And I'm still learning too. As you know, I'm still learning from people like you and people who are much younger than me. You never stop, so appreciate those words. Hey, when it comes to mentoring, my dad has to be number one. He was a pastor, strong leader, strong teacher, was a builder of churches. And so I just watched him. He didn't really give me a lot of verbal mentoring, but I watched his life, and I find that watching someone is as important as what they say. And then my older brother, John, in the early days, John's 5 years older than me. He was first of 5 kids. I was the third. And John is just a maverick. He's also a pastor, retired now, of course. But he was a goer, adventure. All my brushes with death have come from following my brother somewhere off a cliff. But that's just the way he is. And so those two men early in life, as I was growing up as a child. But then when I got into ministry at him, I would say that Chuck Swindoll in my first church of 70 people, Fallen, Wisconsin, if I was there 5 years, but I would listen to Chuck Swindoll. I don't know if you know that name.
Yes.
He's still preaching, by the way. I think he's in his late 80s or something. I'm not sure what he is, but one of the finest Bible teachers for application on the planet. And I would sit in my little dinky dumpy office in Fallen, Wisconsin, and I would record him on my tape recorder every single day with no volume, just so I had the recording. I could listen to it later in the day because I do my own writing in the morning. So every single day I listened to Chuck Swindoll, and he was by far my strongest mentor in my developmental stages of becoming a preacher.
Whoa.
Yeah, hands down. And so I've modeled his style pretty much all through life. And then along the way, John Ortberg, had a similar style, I would say. I'd listen and read everything John did. But Chuck Swindoll, back in the day when I was just becoming a pastor, new in my career, he was strong. And then all-time top mentor in my life, Bill Hybels. And I know that name carries with it, some baggage these days, but, Bill was the tip of the spear. And people like me, I've got a whole list of churches and pastors who we owe our life to Bill in terms of our professional life. You can go from Life Church, Craig Rochelle, our church, LCBC, Dave Ashcraft, Church of the Highlands, Chris Hodges. All these guys were mentored by Bill. We all took our cue from Bill Hybels and Willow Creek Church, Southeast Christian, Dave Stone, Kyle Eidelman, on and on and on, Seacoast Church in South Carolina, Larry Osborne, Ada Bible Church, Jeff Mannion, Gateway Church in Dallas, Robert Moore, Central Church in Las Vegas, Judd Wilhite, North Point, Andy Stanley. All of us will credit Bill Hybels as the man that God used to bring just a monumental shift in our culture, in our nation, and really in our world with regard to how church could be. I will never forget the moment I drove on, for the first time, I drove on to Willow Creek's campus. I had whoever was driving the van, I said, "Stop." We were still a quarter mile away from the building. And I said, "Is this a church?" That was is this a church? It looked like a business headquarters spread out over, 100 acres, the campus was, and just this massive building that had no stop to it. And my jaw dropped. We were a church of 400 at the time. I was just a kid. And I thought, you have got to be joking. And then I attended my first service there, and I watched Bill teach and lead. And Adam, I'll tell you, that visual and that experience, that single experience, blew my mind and shattered every preconceived notion I had of what church could be from that moment on. And so, I read everything Bill wrote. I was invited into a group of about 50 pastors across the nation, and we would, get on Dick DeVos's boat, and we would be mentored by Bill, and he'd invite us to South Haven, Michigan, and some one-offs in Chicago, on and on and on. And eventually, I don't know how this happened, but he invited me to be on their board. They'd never had an outside pastor. I was the first one to do that. I was intimidated beyond intimidation. That first board meeting, I wasn't going to say a word. But Bill, anyway, I sat next to Bill Hybels, head of the table, between him and Dick DeVos for 6 years, and I watched leadership at its best. And for all his most recent unfortunate things that happened in his life, blunders. I I will always credit Bill as the man who I wouldn't be where I am. I'll tell you that our church would never have existed the way it is if it weren't for Heibel's leadership.
Bob, thanks for sharing that. And I say thanks. It's the messiness of the gospel. For anybody who's like Bill Hybels, you should never mention him. I'd be like, well, then you're not going to want to mention most of the Bible characters as well.
Yeah, you better not mention David.
Yeah, and I don't say that lightly
Right.
because it's not glossing over anything, but I just really value that. I actually just yesterday had a guy not in the church world, he's just in leadership, and he mentioned Bill as well. And he said, I feel like embarrassed to mention this, and yet it's true that God used this broken man to touch my life. And Bob, I really appreciate you sharing that. I actually didn't know any of those parts of being on. That's really good. I had the same moment when I went to Southland with where John Weiss is at, and the transition happened in there. But I remember getting to Southland. I drove by on my way to Asbury, and I was like, "What the heck is that?" This building, you drive by it on Harrodsburg Road, and it just goes on forever. And now that's a church. And then I went there, and John Weiss is on stage, the most likable human being on the earth.
Right.
And it just blew my mind at what was possible.
Right.
I'm so
Right.
grateful for that. Bob, advice for someone finding a mentor. I don't have a mentor. I'm a business leader. I wish that I did. Everybody, Bob, you got all these relationships that I don't have. What would be your advice to getting a mentor?
Well, first of all, be intentional. If you want a mentor, be intentional about making that known, and don't be afraid to ask. But I just have to tell you, Adam, I think mentors are in short supply these days because when you're looking for a mentor, you're looking for someone who's wise, typically who hasn't wrecked their life, self-destructed. You're looking for someone whose marriage is intact, whose family is fairly well intact, and who has a track record, who's lived and is kind of older because they have to have enough life experience. And then the other thing is, are they available? So there may be some people, in our case, men. Women could be mentors, but we'll talk about men here for men. You might be a person who's mature, wise, biblically grounded. You're married, but you're golfing in Florida. We're playing pickleball, in Arizona. Well, they're not available unless it's online, and that's possible, certainly possible for sure. But all I'm saying is it's really hard. It's really hard to find good mentors. I think the pool is dwindling. Well, maybe not. That might be unfair to say. But I love this verse, Proverbs 14:20. He who walks with the wise becomes wise. So you're looking for someone who's wise that you can walk with or will build into you. But a companion of fools suffers harm, the verse says. Well, I don't mean to be harsh, but most people are fools. And so how many wise, godly people who've built something or achieved something, who've dealt with their blind spots, and are available? How many of those people do you know? Not many.
Yeah.
Not many. And so, and they're available. They're willing to be a mentor to you. But to go back to your question, what am I looking for in a mentor? One who's spiritually grounded and still growing. I'm 68. I've got a lot to learn. Okay. A person who's not a loner. In other words, they value community, they value church. A person who's a learner and a reader. I'm shocked at how many people don't read.
Yep.
I just talked to a guy yesterday. My marriage is in the tank. Well, what are you reading? Nothing. Have you been to church recently? No. And I'm like, okay, let's start there, right? Let's start
Yes.
So are they reading? Are they learning? Because if you're not reading and learning, you're not growing. And so I need to be around people who are still engaged with life and who are growing and can actually have a fair exchange of wisdom. Does that make sense?
It's great.
If I'm going to be in a relationship with someone and invest in that relationship, it's got to be a mutual benefit. And so, yeah, we're talking about mentors, but I'm involved with you, Adam, and you have added so much to my life. You have mentored me. I watch your charisma. I watch how you teach. I watch how you're leading. I watch your kindness, your love for lost people. That means the world to me, and I'm learning by watching you. So there's this mutuality, I think, in a mentorship relationship. If it's all one-sided, I just think that that's unfortunate. So, are they learning, reading? Do they have a track record? Have they built or achieved something? Are they faithful to their family and spouse? Have they dealt with their blind spots? And finally, they're not playing pickleball and bingo in Florida. So,
That's so good. What would you say? That is an incredible list. Any other like how do I sit with someone like yourself? If I'm 30 years old,
yeah, yeah.
40 years old, what would be your advice? And I'll give you one that you gave me. So I still don't know how I got this time with you. This is years ago. I'm in your office. You're at Eagle Brook. I don't know. I think you had a lapse of judgment just that day, letting this Yahoo in. And I'll never forget you saying, Adam, you might want to bring out your. I took out my notebook and a pen like 10 minutes into our time. And you said, I was going to suggest that. Like, I was like, note to self, if I'm ever with Bob, have something to write with. That was just, you were coaching me in that moment.
I'm glad you brought, yeah, go ahead.
Any other moments, anything else like that you would, hey, if you're going to find a mentor, try this. Any pro tips to get at a table with someone like yourself? Yeah. What would you say?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, by the way. So if you ask someone like me for my time, and my time is valuable, okay? Or
Yes.
anybody, if you ask for their time, do them, pay them the honor and respect by taking out a piece of paper and pen or a notepad and type it on your computer, whatever, and lean in because you're not, chances are they're not going to remember. But it just shows like, okay, I really want to learn. And by the way, we talk about this at Eagle Brook a lot. Don Graffin will talk about campus pastors, and he watches these campus pastors, and those who are on campus pastors who are on time with a notepad and pen, taking notes, et cetera, et cetera. Their whole team follows that.
Wow.
Campus pastors who are late to the meeting, don't take any notes, don't dial in. Guess what? Their whole team shows up late, lackadaisical, not dialed in, not taking notes, and it's like, time out. Here's the culture we're setting. We're gonna learn. If this meeting's a waste of time, then let's not have it.
Yep.
But if you've asked me for some of my time, I expect you to dial in and take notes. Second thing I'd say is just be prepared in your questioning. Come prepared with 2 or 3 good questions that aren't yes and no questions, but give thought. If I'm going to ask someone for their time, I spend a good half hour, 45 minutes thinking about the question or questions that I want to have addressed. So don't waste my time.
So good.
You know, if you want some of my time, what do we want to talk? I had a lunch with a guy. No kidding. This was about 2 months ago. High level guy. It seemed like he's kind of new to me in my relationship. Actually, I spoke at his conference, and he said, "Hey, let's have lunch next week." It's a local one here in the Twin Cities. So I thought, okay, he's got a question, or he's got something he wants to dial in on. Adam, it was the most wasted hour. And I'm like, why did we do this? What was the purpose of this lunch? And so I just, by the way, anymore when somebody asks me for a lunch, I always, and they don't tell me what it's about, I always ask them. I say, okay, can you give me a heads up? What is this lunch about? And half the time the lunch is canceled because it's an agenda that they have or I can't address or don't have any interest in. So save yourself some time. Ask if you're a mentor or in your case, a pastor, senior pastor, and someone asks you for a lunch, it's okay to say, hey, what is this about? Can you tell me? Can you give me a heads up? What do you want to talk about? And if it's just to say, hey, I don't know, I just want to get, well, you may want to pass. You would. I would.
This, if you're listening right now, this series is all about mentors. This is why you want to be around people like Bob. I mean, just what you just shared right there. You just bought back how much time of meetings that you shouldn't be going to, and I mean that. And Bob, and I'm not saying this to fluff your feathers. When I meet with you, my problem isn't what should I talk about. My problem is I got 50 things I want to talk about, but what are the one or two things on the list of 50? And the whole time we meet, I literally am like trying to like take your pulse on his. Have I asked too many questions to Bob? Like, can I ask him one more? And that's how you should feel going into this. You should like, I have so much that I want to talk to him about. What are the one or two things I'm going to ask? Okay. So Bob, when I thought of you, I thought there's three specific things that I thought that I go to you, and there's more than this, but you fill me with faith. You and Jim Lake, when I'm around you, I want to run through a brick wall afterwards. Anything's possible. The other thing that I pick up from you specifically is your heart for the lost. I mean, that's the driver of your life. I just love that. And then the third thing, and it's what it's you buy in so much street cred in my eyes. You already have so much. And I don't know if I've even just told you this specifically. How you buy even more as a man is you're so quick to share your shortcomings. I was just talking about you with a high level leader yesterday, and he brought up mentors, and I started talking about you. And I said, Bob, he's still learning. And then you get on here and you're like, Adam, I'm learning from you. I'm like, this is exactly, I mean, there's just so much. Okay. So when it comes to your faith, and like, what I mean that is like, when I'm around you, anything's possible with God. That's just, I believe it more than any, you just have that. Has that always been the case for you? And how do you build this? Like, have you always just had this mentality? God put it on my heart. Let's go do it, even if it's insane. Was that always the case? And how do you build this? How do you
Not
build
really.
this?
Yeah, Adam, early on, first church, I had no idea what I was doing. When I came to White Bear here 34 years ago now, I felt like a fish out of water. We were a church of 300. I had just come out of Penn State University, re-entering ministry really. 5 years in fall, and then 3 years took a hiatus to Penn State, and then came back to the Twin Cities, and I just felt tremendously inadequate, ill-prepared, behind, didn't know anything about church, how to lead a bigger church. I thought 300 was a big church. It is, but just I didn't feel, how did you describe it, bold or anything's possible. I thought I'm just trying to survive. And I think that's okay. I think there's a season of that where you're just getting up every day and you're going to the salt mine and you're putting in your hours the best you can, and you I felt very overwhelmed for I would say a good 5 years. Those first 5 years here in the Twin Cities, our church did start to grow after the second or third year, and then by year 10, but we were a church of, I don't know, 5 or 6,000 people. But I would say all the way through, I felt, I didn't feel like anything was possible. People would say things to me, man, Bob, get ready. Your future's bright. I can see you surpassing this, that, and the other. And I'm like, really? I was just so exhausted running from this to that to the other. And as you know, it landed me in front of a counselor for a good year and a half. I barely survived. So those first years, I just want to say that ministry is really hard. To those of you who are in ministry or building any sort of business or whatever it might be, there is a season. I just told this to another person a few days ago. There is a season of just flat out grind, and you almost can't escape it if you're going to achieve something of worth. Um, there's going to be exhaustion. There's going to be stress. There's going to be mistakes made, criticisms that are come flying your way. And there is a season, I would say earlier in life than later in life, but all through life it's hard. But I would say that, man, there is a cost to building something, and you can't avoid it. And I would say you're in that. You've been in ministry for a long time, Adam, but you're in a new phase that's going to exact a toll on your life, and it is exacting a toll. Which, by the way, is we'll get to this. I'm all over the map here a little bit.
No, this is good.
Which
This
is
is
why I
good.
have such empathy for guys like you in your late 30s, early 40s, and you're right in the middle. And I just know what that feels like, and I know the pressures that come your way, and you just need to be encouraged. And so, that's why I've come alongside you a little bit and a couple other guys because I see such promise and such drive and such passion, and your heart is good and there's humility. Man, those are the guys I want to breathe life into because I know it's hard. So all that to say, I mean, your original question was, have I always been a person who thought anything's possible? No. Those first those first 10 years were not fun at all. But looking back, now, 29 years later, or after I started there, 29 years later, man, I saw that almost anything is possible. But it took me 20 years really to say, oh man, this is, God is faithful. But man, when
Jim,
you're swinging the bat day after day, it feels like, am I going to make it to the next, you know?
is there anything away from experience? Because it's almost like faithful with little, I'll trust you with much. And maybe that's the same way of building your faith. Is there any way away from you start and it's kind of compound interest? Is that the only way to get it?
There it is. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know if that's the only way, but I think when you're building something and you got to have some wins. You've heard
Yeah.
that. I mean, really important to have some wins. And so when you have a win or two, that certainly builds your confidence, and it's certainly not only in yourself, but of course in God and in His leading. And then when other people, when other people chime in and say, God's got His hand on you, when your board is behind you and they say, hey, I'm all in with you. Those are deposits in your life and in your soul that says, okay, maybe God, maybe we can do all things through Christ who gives us the strength. I mean, that's a verse I'm staring at. It stares at me every single day. It's on a plaque. Uh, I can't do all things, but I can get through all things through Christ who gives me the strength. It's not me. It's really I need to draw on His strength every single day. But as I've done that over a lifetime, Adam, God's been faithful. But I'm a slow learner, man. It took me 60 years to really trust God. It's a daily thing. I mean, maybe it's easier for me to say it to guys like you because I'm no longer in it. I can say, hey. But honestly, I have hindsight, and I see the ingredients in your life personally and in your church embrace. I see the ingredients that made me, quote unquote, or our church successful, and they're there. What you have to avoid is any kind of train wreck.
Yep. Yep. No, that's good. I think you said it, but just to clarify for people listening, I think it's that experience, but then also the voice of others.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
board, a mentor, whatever. I mean, Bob, I mean, every time I'm around you, what's possible just explodes. I mean, even you don't even have to even say anything. It's just like you being present. It's just like the expectation raises when I'm around you. And that I think
Yes,
that's just the power of
I wasn't.
others.
I'm not fully aware of that. I don't doubt that that's true. Part of that too, though, is my personality. I'm sort of a forceful person. That's not necessarily a good thing. It's gotten me into trouble, but you know, I do go for it. I was always the leader on the basketball court. I was always the leader. It didn't matter who it was. Even a pickup at the YMCA. I didn't know anybody. I ended up being the leader on the basketball team, and there were guys older, bigger, and better than me, and I'd still lead it. It was just so I have a leadership chip inside me, a leadership gift, and so part of that optimism, where we can do this, is part of my DNA, the way I'm wired. But believe me, when it comes to ministry or stepping out in faith, doubt is right there. Doubt is always nagging on me.
Okay, so I just want to briefly touch on this. I was going to jump over this, but honestly, this is just for maybe just my ears even. Your heart for the lost, where did that come from? Like as far as like, because I have that same thing, and for me, where it comes from is I know what it's like to be lost, and then as a sophomore in high school to hear the greatest news that's ever been told, and then so that drives me. And my other thing, it's John 15. Apart from me, you can do nothing. That is this like if you look that verse up in Scripture, there's a picture of my face right next to it. I can't do anything. The fruits of the Spirit vanish immediately from my life without him. And I just, why that propels me forward is because I can't imagine being wired like me and not knowing the peace that surpasses all understanding. And so for me, I have to tell people because I would be so broken without him. Well, for you, where does that come from though?
Yeah. So again, so two pieces to that. I would say first of all, it's God given. It's something that it's not. I don't have an evangelistic gift, but I have an evangelistic heart, and as you do. Um, so I think God somehow just picks a few of us out or many of us out and says, I'm going to give you a heart that bleeds for those who are far from me.
Yeah.
But along with that, I grew up in a pastor's home and I was in church all my life, a good church, good churches. My dad was a great pastor. And I was always around biblical teaching and preaching, and my dad was a person who had a heart for lost people as well. So in high school, I would say the earliest signs of this were, I was on basketball team, football team, track team, and most of my classmates were lost and, getting drunk on the weekends, sleeping with their girlfriends, all that stuff. But I had three friends who were Christians, two friends who were Christians, Phil Print and Dale Nichols. And the three of us decided, we're going to be graduating here as seniors, and we haven't said anything about our faith to these guys. Not a single word. And the three of us decided we're going to start a Bible study and invite our friends. And this was like in the spring of our senior year. Terrifying. Terrifying. And so we decided what night it would be, and nobody came. Not a single person came. The three of us were there, and we had a gal who was supporting it and all that. And we said, well, what happened? And then we said, well, did you invite anybody? I said, no. Did you? So we said, okay, everybody, we need to invite at least 3 or 4 people, which we did. So next week we had a Bible study for our non-Christian, totally off the rails friends. Why do we have a Bible study for these guys? But we did, and 16 people came. And in that group was a guy by the name of Todd Hamilton and Kirk J. and Lori Saginaw. And those three came to Christ 2 months later. And that was the beginning. And I to this day, I can't believe that Todd Hamilton became a Christian. It was transformational for him, but for me as well. And we're still in touch today. We get Christmas cards and things like that. But that was the start, Adam. With that said, I am very, very bad at one-on-one evangelism. I don't do it well. I'm afraid of it. I don't know how to start conversations. I will if I'm forced to, on a plane or whatever, but I generally don't talk to people on a plane. I just want to be left alone. But here's what I found that God has used me and yourself and others to lead people to Christ in our services. So we make inviting people to our church very easy because we've created a church experience that both Christian and non-Christian people can attend. And I've coined the phrase conversions in a crowd, just like when Peter stood up and 3,000
Yeah.
people came to Christ in one day because of his message. It wasn't one-on-one evangelism. So through that method, we've led thousands of people to Christ in a crowd. Prayer at the end of a service, and then will you be in contact with you? So I've led thousands of people to Christ that way. It's not that I don't do one-on-one, but man, we've seen, like I said, many, many, many people come to Christ through our church services. So that's kind of been our strategy and my own personal strategy as well. But where did that come from? Came way back with Todd Hamilton and Kirk J. and my two friends, Phil Print and Dale Nichols.
I'm so glad I asked that because um, oftentimes an upbringing like that, I'm in a pastor's family, not even a pastor's family. I'm in a Christian and a good Christian family. Oftentimes it's the opposite. It's kind of like, I just want to be in my holy huddle and I don't want, these outsiders are going to mess this up. But for you to have that experience and to see the joy of seeing someone to come to Christ, and also just the total awe of, this is the last guy that I ever thought, like, that's pretty cool, Bob. Like,
100%. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So the other piece to this, though, is I'm a right and wrong guy, kind of black and white, and I just saw the wreckage. I just saw the wreckage in my classmates' lives. And I knew that I had avoided most of that. I wasn't perfect by any means, but that just made my heart break. And it still does to this day when I see people self-destruct over whatever choices they're making. And it fundamentally, it starts with, well, do you have Jesus in your life?
yep.
So anyway, that's kind of a God-given thing, but also something that's been developed.
So good. Okay, last part of that I want to get to. Why I just I just have so much respect for you as you're quick to share your shortcomings.
Hmm.
So Bob, you're direct. You're a direct human being. It's one of the things that I would say I value that about you. Why you have so much buy-in in my life and the life of so many others is in that directness. You're also very honest about who you are. I think if it was just the directness without that humility, I think that's where I could see it being hard. Of like, gosh, Bob's quick to say, but never says any of his backside. You share it all the time. I mean, you in this time here, I have so much doubt. I'm not good at personal event. I mean, you just constantly are sharing your shortcomings, which I think is just so honorable because you wouldn't have to do that. I mean, at your place in life, you could say, no, actually, I do walk on water. And but I just love that about you, Bob. Question, and what I'm trying to get to is the richness of this. Has that always been the case? Have you always been willing to share that? Yeah, how did you begin to see that if that was hard? That kind of that self-awareness piece. So have you always been willing to share your imperfections and shortcomings? Has that always been the case? And how did you begin to see that? And then one step further, verbalize that. It's one thing to see it. It's another thing to tell me as I'm interviewing you.
Well, there's a whole backstory to it, but by about year 10 in my ministry, so I was 44 years old. The church had grown fast. A lot of staff were added, and I was running on fumes, extremely stressed. On the outside exterior, when I stood on stage, people thought it was great. Merritt's in good shape. He's teaching well. Behind the scenes, it was a mess. I was angry at home. I was angry at my kids. I was short with my staff. I was, and you know, when you're stressed out and exhausted, you're not at your best. You're usually at your worst. So whatever demons you have inside of you tend to come out when you're under extreme stress and exhaustions. You know, depletion is a very dangerous place to be. And so I didn't know how to manage it, Adam. I didn't know how to get my arms around this thing that I loved, which was the church. But, you know, I was a part of something that was beginning to consume, eat me alive, if I can put it that way. I mean,
Yeah.
I was the focal point of everybody's email, good or bad. Everybody's phone call, everybody's wedding, funeral, you name it. And plus, by the way, you got to prepare a fantastic message in 5 days for the weekend and speak 4 or 5 times on the weekend and do that all over again for 45 times a year. It was unsustainable, and so I just came to a breaking point. I'm so grateful to this day for one of our board members, Dean Hager, who also had kind of a crash, if you will, a burnout crash. And I think most, actually, I think most quote unquote successful, hard driving leaders hit a wall eventually. And that wall can either destroy you or it can be the beginning of a new life. And so, yeah, the board said you either get counseling or we're going to fire you. And I was shocked. I couldn't believe that these 7 people held my fate in their hands, but they did. And I said, well, I'll go get counseling. But so I entered a year-long coaching, counseling deal with Fred Keel, and he interviewed everybody who knew me, my wife, my mom, my brother and
Oh,
sisters, all my anybody who knew me, all my staff. What's good about Bob? What's bad about Bob? And people unloaded, and
gosh.
many of them used it to twist the sword, twist the knife, and I had it coming because all they experienced was harshness and anger and get it done or move out kind of thing. I had no time for people. I was just trying to survive. That's my only defense. I was just so overwhelmed. I was just trying to hang on and survive without exploding. So anyway, went through that coaching and counseling, and I was broken, flat out. I was just broken. Um, Part of that story is when my son they accumulated 230 pages of feedback. This counselor and his assistant
Oh my gosh.
read it back to me word for word what people had said, and my son, when he was interviewed, said something like this: "I wonder why my dad is so angry all the time." And he was 15 years old. And when I heard that, I just I just was I was broken. And that was the turning point in my life, Adam. So when I say when you hit the wall, that can either be an opportunity for a new life of um, kindness, gentleness. I had to take some time off. I had to quit some things. I had to quit teaching, preaching at Bethel Sem as kind of a side gig. That saved my life. I mean, I was able to regroup and look at my stuff, and then I had to go to counseling again 5 years later. I said I thought I was done with all this, and they said, well, you're never done. So I wrote a book about that called Done with That, and that's where that book was born out of. I'd gone through all this counseling. I thought, well, I got that taken care of. Well, not really. There was still other stuff below that had to come out. Lack of compassion, for example. I didn't. My dad didn't have a compassionate spirit, and I didn't either. Was hard on myself and hard on others, and so it's just looking at the things that are there that everybody else sees and experiences, but you're unaware of it. It's destroying your reputation, it's destroying your career, it's destroying your family, but you're the only one who doesn't see it. And so it was the first opportunity I had to see it. And if you don't see it, you can't correct it. And so by God's grace, I was able to, you know, get better. I'm still not over all of it. I still can get short and harsh. But again, it's why I have a whole lot of empathy and compassion for guys like you. Because ministry and life can get really hard. And I want to be a support to you. I want to be an encourager, person you can trust. You know I'm praying for you. You know I'm cheering you on. Because I'll tell you what, you get shot at. So I don't know if that answers your question. I can't remember what the question
No,
was.
that answers it perfectly. Maybe one final question. That driven person who's angry, jaded, fill in the blank, what should they do? They're a pastor, they're a high level leader at their business, and they're just angry. What would you say to that person?
Pay attention. Pay attention to that anger. If you're angry, there's something going on. And by the way, if you're angry, it's spilling out, and it's hurting every person you touch, and it ultimately will hurt you in the long run. You'll be isolated, you'll be lonely, you could get fired, you could lose your marriage, you could lose your kids. I know so many parents whose kids don't talk to them. And a lot of it is the dads, a lot of it is the anger, the misbehavior, sometimes abandonment from the dad. There's a lot of stuff that Eldridge talks about. We talked about John Eldridge before this taping. Just what dads, you know, we all have a father wound we carry around, and if we'd ever look at that or understand where this anger comes from, that's a problem. So, you know, pay attention to what's spilling out of you. The hard thing is you just don't see it. You know, so my wife would tell me, Bob, how come you're so angry? And I'd be like, get off my case. What do you know? I mean, you know, I would blow her off, but that's why this counseling was so important, because person after person after person, when you hear it from 30 different people, then you say, oh, my wife is right. I might have a problem with anger. And if you don't admit that, you're just a fool. You know, you're in denial. You're fooling yourself. And so the best thing to do is to face it. Start asking some questions, get a good counselor. I think every person ought to go through counseling at some point in their life. Why? Because we're all sinful. We're all human. We all have deficits. We don't like it. Who likes to go to counseling? I don't. I hate it. You start poking around. No one likes it. So it takes a measure of courage and maturity to go to counseling. Only the weak refuse to go to counseling.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. Adam, anyone else you want to thank?
Yeah, need to thank Bob. Bob, if you're hearing this or seeing this, I'm so grateful for you. I talk about you literally every single day. Every chance I have to honor you, I do so. And so I just love you so much. Thanks to our partners, First Interstate Bank. I love banking with you, and I'm honored to have you as a partner on the conversation. Also, just thanks to the Tyler Groff Group. Genuinely love the entire team so much, and thanks just for all that you've done for me. But yeah, just thanks to all of you who listen on a regular basis. I hope these episodes are encouraging to you, and I pray they just inspire you to continue the work that God has for you.
Yeah.
So
thanks so much, guys. Have a good day.